Hi everybody and welcome of course to Lifestyle Business Design, and thank you for coming back onto my channel. And here's the thing, I have something absolutely amazing for you. So of course sitting with me is the wonderful Stephen Gillen.
Hi Paul, it's lovely. It's lovely to be here. It really is. We're going to have a very deep dive and some very key issues, right?
Well, my reason for coming here today, one was thank you for agreeing to do 3 episodes in this series of what I am calling the emotional mind to extreme crime and back. Yes, the emotional mind to extreme crime and back. Now, I don't want to go too much into history because here's the thing, you only have to Google Stephen Gillen and you'll get enough information that you can read for yourself, viewers, without me having to put too much of that into our film time here, our recording time. So you go and find that, because trust me, you'll get all you need there. But this man here has done his cap and gown in what we call the Life University, the emotional Life University. You've got your cap and gown. And what I want to cover here today, because here's the thing, people talk about crime like it's a disease, like it's leprosy, like it's cancer, but crime isn't something that we are born into. It's something that we become because of circumstances in our lives. And it's important that, why I want to talk about it in the way we go into today is so, one, when people catch this video, catch these episodes, if they are finding themselves moving into that environment or are curious about that environment, they understand the karmic return and that comes with this. And also where it'll give them an opportunity to look at themselves and really assess why it is they're going into that environment also. Because, the only reason we say crime is because it's against the nature of what society says is normal.
Absolutely.
And effectively, we don't even know if crime is crime. They're just saying crime is crime. There are so many ways to look at this. We say the grass is green, but actually it could be blue. We've just chosen green as the name for it. And this is the fact of life. And what I want to do in these episodes, viewers, is I want us to look at life currency versus money currency and the emotional currency of debt. Now, I've got lots of notes, so I'm going to be looking down. I'm going to be taking notes. I've got lots of pointers that I want to go through these episodes. I'm just going to put this down there, these episodes. But I want to start with this one, which is The Lost Boy. Now, I have listened to some of your podcasts, some of your interviews, because you've got a wild stream going out there in the sense of there's a lot of interviews, a lot of footage out there. But what I'm learned is that from almost first breath, your intake of your environment in your seeing, listening, breathing, and feeling was very different to the average environment, or what we call the societal normal environment. That wasn't your case. Your case was there was a very different sound.
Very extreme.
Yes, very extreme. And I don't just want to put it to the extreme, because here's the thing, everybody has a different measure of what extreme is in their life, and it's all relevant, absolutely. But you didn't get to meet your dad, your biological dad. Now, I understand that because neither did I. I understand that, and that emotion that somewhat feels unnecessary. It feels, well, what is important? If I didn't meet him, I didn't meet him. But we could say that, why I'm going here, Stephen, is that right from the off, there was an abandonment. Right from the beginning, before you even become aware of your world, of your environment, your first tastes, your first listening, your first awareness, there was a knowing that there was someone there that played a part in your existence that was no longer there. Then we have, of course, from that we have you hit then Ireland at 6 months old. In Ireland then, we're just you, Mum, in Ireland, would that be correct?
Well, the first thing that I would say, Paul, is look, I always say, and I've learned this in the experience of my journey, that life doesn't give us what we want; it gives us what we become.
Yes.
that's very important. So, if we look at that, what does that mean? I mean, life is for learning. Pretty much we are a habitual construct anyway, if you want to really get down to it, right? So we're made up of all these emotions and all these people, places and things, right? Which are snapshots, right? So, all these experiences and traumas and highs and lows, they're woven into these emotional responses which drive us. But, what happens to so many people, unfortunately, is this starts to guide them rather than having the guidance system that is healthy. So this weighs everyone down from the off, and then you look at the environmental issues that you have to navigate that I had. So I just want to say that, but let's pull it back to your question, all right? To give it a bit of context. So I was taken to Ireland at age 6 months by my mother. Of course, it was right in the middle of the war there. We was West Belfast, so shootouts from the flats in the night was a normal occurrence. Bombs going off and all this. So it was an environment of real suspicion. Of there was even an ethnic cleansing going on there between people, where you go to one street where you was friends and neighbours had turned to had turned on each other, and now they was ready to do unspeakable things to each other. So this is what it was, right? So I was left there. My mother left me there with aunts and uncles. They was very God-fearing people in that Catholic sense there, right? But they was very kind, wonderful people. But it was claustrophobic in that way because of what was really happening outside the door. I was never allowed out in that sense. Okay. So I was the child who was upstairs, looking out the window at all the other children who seemed to be having a great time and was allowed out, but I was never really allowed to go out and mix with them.
Yeah,
right?
Wow.
Yeah, so that gives you an understanding, and then look, it has to be said, it is what it is. But I didn't meet my mother until years later, so there was no interaction after that. She come back to England to make a life for us, which was what the thing was. But that was it. I was left there.
But during that time, Stephen, it would be fair to say, as a human being, that there was extreme vulnerability, extreme abandonment, very little worth, and also we have is no sense of belonging. We have 4 of the key emotions that are built into then what is a human being looking for versions of this.
Yeah.
We kept, and this is natural for everybody. Yours is at an extreme level because of the environment you're in, the noises, everything else that your senses were picking up. We're also feeding into the extremity of those, which is again vulnerability, abandonment, zero worth, and of course no sense of belonging. Then what we're doing is when we think about those emotions, Stephen, and think, okay, how do I now fill this? And at some given point then, Stephen is then reaching out, of course, looking for a sense of belonging, looking for an abandonment, looking for worth, self-worth as a human being, as a child, as a teenager, looking for these things. And then it's fair to say, because you felt the opposite to what we could say the normal, or a normal society child was being brought up in, because you was the opposite, then
codes of conduct. Yeah, normal codes of conduct. I mean, look, what you're saying there is very fundamental, Paul, because these are the drivers, of a human being, to feel loved, to feel needed, to feel wanted, right, to feel useful, right? And when these things are not, when these needs are not met on an innate, level, these are real drivers. Human beings don't even understand unless they're educated about how these things actually work. Intrinsically. As a basic nature, right? So and this causes all kinds of problems. I mean, look, you know, even now, it's you know, it was to translate into so much other issues like the addiction problems I had, like the violence, like the criminality. You know, mental health was in there, the whole bit. You know, you're talking about really rough seas for many years, you know, to a very, very extreme level. But of course, it's always in the past. So, you know, when we go back to this is the, you know, the conception of all of these stuff. You know, and it's interesting. There's one more other thing that I would say is that formative years, you know, of course, are so important in the shaping of personality, you know, how we view the world and all that. And there's a contrast here which is worth mentioning and is unique. You know, so you've got this really loving, caring kind in a sanctum behind the door.
Yeah.
But outside the door, you have complete chaos and mayhem, you know, where people are murdering each other, right? You know, and so these are both of these sets of programming are being absorbed by a child, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and for me, I was a child, so I didn't see any, you know, I thought this is the way the world is.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and of course there was a lot of real, you know, changes there. I mean, you know, I see someone die in front of me, killed in front of me, shot. You know, when I was seven years of age, I was stuck behind a hedge. There was, you know, the army turned up. There was, you know, really heavy fire from the flats and all that. But I had to watch this, you know, and he kind of been more than 21. I had to, you know, watch him die, calling for his mother.
Wow.
20 minutes.
And
I was there to watch that, crying my eyes out.
Wow.
Because it's
and how old are you at this point then, Stephen?
7.
Wow. So it's
So this shadowed the world for me. Obviously, that was. You see, to be stuck there, Paul, was something else. To see it is something, but to be stuck there with it all the way through it is something else. I have to tell you, right?
So at some point, you had to make an emotional choice whether the home was a normality or the streets were the normality. So at some point, you had to flip that into reality. One of those environments had to become your life.
You have to condition that into the psyche because we have to survive. You know, the fallback position in you have to survive. You want to live. You know, child or adult, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, everyone kind of had to circumvent that in some way, navigate that, right? But you know, one of the things that I've always thought about is that, look, you know, people have asked me the question before about fearlessness. You know, is this an innate thing, or what is this fearlessness thing that drove me to do this burning trail right all the way through, so far, so high? But you know, if you talk to psychologists about this, it's really interesting because they'll say, well, there's a different thing, and what the crux of it really is in the formative years for someone growing up with these emotional responses is if they're given kindness or they're given trauma. If you're given, you know, that trauma and a really bad formative years, then these people can turn out to be all kinds of off the rails people, shall we say. But when you get a lot of kindness, these are the people that may turn out to be fighter pilots or adrenaline junkies, or really. So it's funny how this translates, because what I said to people always was, they say, "Oh, are you mad? Are you bad?" and all this stuff. You know, I say, no, that's not the thing. Really, what I found in my life was that I'd become something I was never meant to be. You know, really. But the thing that saved me really is, you know, I had the courage, the circumstance, the intervention, and the strength, all these things, to find my way back to myself, Paul. But where was the point? You know, the pivotal point that makes me so different, I would be able to do that. And I would say it's the contrast between these two things, because really, I was given a lot of kindness earlier on. Although outside the door, the violence, but I had that to draw on.
Let me come
It's
back.
interesting, right?
Yeah, it is. It's really technical. It's an emotional, technical life to live in, because you've got kindness and take that are running simultaneously, but both are equal. I got kindness in my home, and then I got take outside of the home, effectively taking lives, taking from the emotional economy. we could say, okay?
Two ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, but yet
really there.
both are making sense in this child's life because they are both running parallel. So then what we have is a conflict. We have this conflict of what is this lovely person that's experienced good people around him, even though we could say, you know, it was controlled. You were in a home where you were safe in that home. They wanted to keep you safe. So that was the safe part. Then we got the outside part, which effectively, this is what the streets are like, but that's still as safe as it can be because that's where I live. Then suddenly we got this conflict. And this is something that kind of can resonate with individuals that are in this place in life where there are, you know, there's complications, whether it's crime, whether it's you know, abuse, whether it's addiction, whatever it may be. It comes from that place of, well, that was okay, but that wasn't. But yet the kindness and the take in my life, you know, I've got good parents. I had good parents, but yet they was ferociously controlling, and the list is endless. Where I'm going with this is that we are seeing that what the pivots then, the emotional pivots, of course, is first the kindness and the take running simultaneously. We have what is, of course, the vulnerability, the abandonment, the zero worth, and of course, no sense of belonging. And then having to find how you filter that into your heart to make yourself whole as a person, because there's nobody else out there doing that for you. Yeah. You know, and then, of course, we attract in, because I want to go further down into this episode where we are then, you know, landing in London. We're landing in London with what is a surge of anger, a surge of frustration, which effectively is bringing all that vulnerability, all that we can say conditioning that you experience in life, and bringing that to London where it's a completely different environment. There's no war there. It's a very different place to be, and then all of a sudden there's a sense of the belonging that you were in, which is an extreme belonging, now being abandoned again. Yeah. Because the environment has now changed. Now we're on our own again, and we've got no mom, we've got no dad, and with this, of course, comes with the lost boy comes, of course, the care homes that you were put in, or should I say that, you know. And there, in those places, there was a lot of, from what I can understand, from what I've heard from your other interviews, there was a lot of violence there also, or hurt, upset, and a lack of belonging again.
Yeah, I mean, look, the abandonment thing is a big thing for people, and it's a funny one because it's subtly done. We tend to, it's one of them kind of really prominent things in our life that we paper over, or we put it under the carpet, or we're conditioned to do that. Yeah. Oh, don't worry about that. What are you talking about? You know, and if you're a male, oh well, you know, we all, you know, you're kind of rushed along in this train of having to become responsive because of the people, places, and things, the environmental conditions that you have to keep getting over. You know, keep finding ways to, you know, to respond to survive, to, you know, to feed the stuff that you need to do, you know, as a human being. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's interesting to talk about it all on this level because hindsight is a wonderful tool when you can look back, right? You know, and this is where the gifts are, you know. And I think too is, look, you know, there's a lot of consistent, you know, trauma there, which is the conditioning again. So, you know, we're always forged into what we're going to become, and then we are the architects of how that's going to be reforged and what we're going to be in the future, right?
At what point, Stephen, in a sense of, not necessarily the age, or we can say an age, at what point did the emotions that we talk about you, which is vulnerability, abandonment, and so on, at what point did they become then your currency, where you started using that negative emotion to become a positive in whichever way it could? What point did that flip, and then all of a sudden Stephen become the spotlight to what shaped you for what was the next coming years?
Well, this is the thing, Paul, and look, you know, you're looking at that consistency of trauma and really extreme, and you know, the abandonment is very, very present, you know, because what happened to me was, you know, my sun and moon, right, you know, which was my surrogate mother there, Madge, she died of cancer when I was 9.
Yeah.
So again, that was taken away. So we have this pattern of anyone who's close to me or anything that's meaningful is taken away,
Yeah.
right? So I have to deal with that, right? You know, in a deep emotional level, right? You know, psychological level, and of course, you know, you've got all the rest of it. So
Did you ever cry?
I
What did that feel like?
look, you know, I mean, when I was younger, absolutely. I mean, I can remember when my uncle come home, they wouldn't, you know, the last time I seen my, you know, Madge, my surrogate mother, she was on the settee, and I'll never forget it, but she just didn't look right, and she was kind of shaking. But that was the last time I took her, because I think when the cancer come, it was very aggressive,
Yeah, yeah.
so it took her quickly. It was only a matter of months, you know, and they wouldn't let me, you know, go to the hospital. You know, rightly so. I can see why, because it was just absolutely terrible. But it took her really, really quickly. So I was left with that image, right, of her really like, you know, and then my uncle, you know, he come home from the hospital, must have come home from the hospital that time one day, and I was still a child, and he told me, like, she was gone, and, you know, we just cried and cried and cried for ages, both of us at that point. But I think that and a few other things, that just had such a hardening of me, and it dehumanized me a lot of stuff, because with that, even touching base, the next thing was I was the child on the boat with the little case that was going to the alien land, and I had to deal with that too, you know, so on to the next. And of course, that was a complete change of everything that I knew, right? You know, and of course, so, you know, I go to England, I go to London.
And
then.
that emotion, Stephen, was going to play itself out many times here, in a sense of going into what you would have been into hostile environment, even, you know, prison, hostile environment, whatever came with the gang, you know, the gang activities. So for you, you were an expert at going into what was considered, you know, an environment that you had to measure very quickly, you had to act upon very quickly.
Oh,
so that
absolutely.
skill came, and you know, I want to just bring that in. That emotional skill came from your arriving in Ireland as a 6-month-old boy. You know, that immediately you learned to have a very high level of hypervigilancy, and in a way that other people wouldn't get, where you could critically see quickly and respond to quickly what was the defense mechanism that came from, you know, I'm going to say the endurance, the emotional endurance and the emotional stamina that you had to evolve quickly from the age of 6 months. You know, I'm heavily going here, because we're going to go back to that transition period. Why I want to go in there heavily is, you know, I want people to realize that this was a boy, a human being, that was forced into an environment by society, yet was rejected by society. Now, use the contradiction is that crime comes from hurt. It comes from hurt. It doesn't come from greed. Greed is different.
Yeah, and environmental issues. You know, you've got the environmental issues as well. If you think of the poverty, if you think of having to survive, you know, the lack of opportunities, you know, having the threat all the time, right? You know, I mean, you know, it's very obvious. These kind of forces condition us as human beings. You know, they really do, right? You know, rightly
Yours
or wrongly.
was different. Your forces were stronger than the average person because of where you were.
Oh,
absolutely. You know, it was very different. Now, let's coming back to that point where, okay, I am now going to take all these emotions, and they are going to be my friends, not my enemies. I'm going to take all the rejection, the abandonment, lack of worth. I'm going to say, okay, first of all, so we saw that transition. When was that? Was it 9, 10, 11, 12, 17?
It's interesting, right? Because really what happens here is, you know, you've got all of that stuff, Paul. But if you really want to pin it down, you say, okay, you know, this is forging, conditioning, programming, all of that. You've got all that responsive stuff that you've learned through that. But what is that accelerant? What ignites this stuff? What's the next pivotal point? Because, you know, there's all that abandonment, everyone going. But when I come to England, you know, I have to survive. I'm in this alien place I don't understand, the people, places, and things. So it's, you know, responsive again.
Give me a measure on the level of
But
loneliness.
I really had a lot of, you know, a lot of anger then.
Yeah.
You know, and that's when the anger started, and you know, it went downhill again really from there. So, you know, this is more of a survival. You know, that's definitely packaged with all the things of the past, and together this is an accelerant of, right, what do I have to do next now to get through this?
You see, disappointment creates anger. Emotional disappointment in the lack of value as a human being is what creates anger. Effectively, there's those layers there, is where we are. And so this anger now, organically, the anger now is being turned into what is a positive, which is I have to use this anger, I have to use these emotions to become skilled in life in one way or another, because this is all I know. Yeah. Now, let me just say, and I'll say this, you know, it takes skill. It takes more skill to be a criminal than what it does to be a business person. It takes more emotional skill and strategy to be a criminal than what it does to be a successful business person, because of the environments that are pushing against your conducts, your way of being, the way of surviving.
Well,
and why I'm saying that is that this was developed from that age of 6 months to that point where suddenly you become recognized as this form of person, not human, this form of person. That was a university that you were in way before the average young boy. So the average boy went to school, took his sandwich box, her sandwich box, went to maths, English, and all those things. Yours was a different study.
Yeah.
You didn't have a sandwich box. You had to find your own sandwich box, and then you had to find your own school. Yeah. And that school was different to any other school. Now, let's not blame crime for this now. This is human survival. This is rejection in the system. And the emotional rejection first, human being rejection is what this is first, because of the lack and loss of what you experienced. And then how does anybody stay sane? Well, your sanity comes in, okay, how do I now build this into a solid wall where, one, nobody can penetrate through, but I can climb over anytime I want?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you that, you know, it's easier to be a criminal in that sense. It certainly was for me at that point than to go the other way. But I'd been conditioned already, and you're right, long before, the foundational choice in a way was already taken out of my hands. This has to be said, because, you know, if we're going to solve this stuff, which is a big thing, you know, about my life now, so that we can change other people's lives and their migration of this stuff before they get there, you know, at the root causes, then we have to look at what it is and what it's not, right? Yeah. You know, to get the right answers, so we can get the right strategies for that. So that has to be said. But look, it's a funny kind of paradox here, as life is full of them, because, you know, to be a CEO like I am now, or, you know, a leader in business, or the other stuff I need to do, there's a lot of shared skills there. What you have to do when I had to, you know, I had to be manipulative in a way. Yeah. I had to cut corners. I had to solve problems. I had to get stuff done. I had to push stuff through, you know, in that other, you know, other life. Yeah. I mean, what you're getting behind that is the value system, and the way that you're programmed to look at the world is different. Yeah. You see, and this is what I say, and I always say to people is, one of the first things I say when I look at trauma or stuff, you know, in the resilience code, we're going to get to that, is that, look, it's very important how your internal engineering and your makeup and how you see the world. If you see the world as something against you, and I'll get what I can when I can, then that's your reality. Yeah. You know, you need to change that internally. Then the world and the outer experience, that will change also. So, it's about seeing the world as a place of opportunity, working for you,
Yeah.
not against you.
Yeah.
And this is a very, very important point, because in them formative years, everything was, the world is working against me.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't trust anything. It's suspicious.
Wow.
It's a matter of survival.
And they were your
Do or
strength.
die at every moment.
They were your strength emotions, Stephen, also then. So,
Yeah. But these are hardwired in from them early years,
it's,
right?
It's so technical to actually, know
But
that
it's simple too.
trust.
It's simple too, Paul, right? And although we need to go over the complexities of this, it's important for people, I've always learned, to translate it into the simple.
Yeah.
Because it is simple, although we're trying to get the right terminology for this that's going to make the penny drop.
Yeah.
Because that's where the answers are, right? Do you know what I'm saying?
I hear you, absolutely. So coming back a little, because I want to sort of end this episode on, we're now in London. You are now reshaping. When I say reshaping, you're having to assess, act upon, or react upon, assess, react upon. So at what point do you feel you started withdrawing out of the emotional economy? What I mean by that is, I am now involved in I'm now into it. I've started my crime life, so I'm starting to take out of the emotional economy, which means I've started stacking my karma, because I'm now taking out of other people's what we call is life currency, because I'm not taking what belongs to me, I'm taking what belongs to somebody else. So that means I've started now stacking up my universal bank of what is karma and negative life currency. What point do you feel did that start?
I think the truth is that it started when the anger come. That's no shock, is it? Because then and that's why I say this important point about how you're always looking at the world is so important. As leading with that, right? Because if that's what you're leading with, then of course everything that comes after that is the taking, and you're susceptible to all their forces, and this multiplies, it lets it in the door, as it were, through the actions, deeds, thoughts, feeling, right? Of course, you're putting the stuff out to the field constantly anyway, right? So you're inviting more of the same back in, right? And we repeat the process. But so you've got the anger, you've got all of that stuff, but there's another part to this, which is having to survive. And then you've got the other really simple drivers of peer pressure, of wanting to belong, of being really, really confused in your own self, right?
Wow.
Of having to emotionally survive this stuff.
So
where do you go from that? And this is where you're really susceptible to the grooming, the grooming. And for me,
when did that start? Yeah.
Well, it's as soon as I come here, really. Really. So you're looking at 9, 10. Really, I'm trying to find my feet. Obviously, there's abandonment. There's all the stuff I have to deal with again. But I've still got to navigate a life. I have to find a way to survive my immediate circumstances, which were not good. So it's responsive again to someone who doesn't have any skills, who's dealing it right. So my art, and the anger was really there. It's not hard to see that when everyone that I loved is taken away from me, and I'm abandoned again. This would be the first response for most people, right?
Because the abandonment, you're thinking, coming back a little, in our story, the abandonment also was supported by outside violence. And outside violence was effectively you stepped outside of your safe home onto the street, and there it was in Ireland. So again, it's ferociously technical in how these then, as a human being, you have to put into some kind of sense.
I mean, when you look at it, it's easy as well, Paul, in a way, because then I come to London, I come to England. There's the peer pressure. There's the need to survive. There's all this new stuff.
The peer pressure, though.
Well, yeah, of course. Look. When we're young, we do get peer pressure. Not even in the sense, but we want to fit in. We want to belong. Friends are very important to you at that time. But you see, the problem is where you're forged and programmed that the world is a certain way. And violence and this butchery and this darkness is a big part of it. and this is what the world is. You don't have anything else to draw from.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
You know, and this is a big problem. So how do you translate that in your own behaviours and deal with the anger and all the other issues? For me, it was to do more and be more. And of course, where I was in London and stuff like that, I was very susceptible to the grooming. So then the other influences come in, which is not really peer pressure as such then. It's more being influenced and being groomed and being used.
Wow.
And being used. So of course, this is the next. Because they sell that very, 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 very beguilingly.
Yeah.
You know, and you're susceptible to that because you're looking for a family.
Wow.
You're looking to belong. You're looking for someone who's going to be protective, and they say, "Oh, well, you come with us." You know, not only is it going to be protective, but hey, it's exciting.
Wow.
And it's glitzy, and you can be this, this, and this, and look at this one and that one and that one. So you're pulled into that, you know, at that point.
So Stephen, we're gonna cut this episode here because our next deep dive is we're gonna follow Stephen's story into what is now the center point, where we could say at its emotional best but yet worst. So we're gonna come back. So do like and of course subscribe, drop your comments in, and of course all Stephen's details will be out with this, so you'll be able to get hold of Stephen, that's for sure. But we're going to come back on our next episode, the emotional mind to extreme crime and back. So I'll catch you next week. No worries.